To celebrate the start of the season, we've teamed up with Sky Bet. Sky Bet understands the emotional roller coaster that's being a football fan. It will lift you up, break you down, and stitch you back together with hope. But we'll do it all again next week, because for all the pain of a looming relegation or missed penalty, there's nothing quite like the absolute scenes of a last-minute winner. Not for everyone, for the fans. Sky Bet 18+, gambleaware.org.
Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Forte Viva. Hope you guys are doing well. Welcome back to this week's review show. We've got 6 more games to look at in greater detail, and we're going to be discussing the other 6 very quickly, the ones that we don't seem to really care about as much as these other 6. I know that's an interesting way of wording it, probably quite disrespectful to these clubs, but we're just going to do it anyway. This is sort of a new format that we did try last week. We only did it last week to sort of merge it in with last week's predictions because there was a midweek fixture list, but we thought we'd try it again. Just think it'll be a slightly better format, but as well as, it's not going to change. We're still going to mention your team one way or another, even if it's not in the full detail as you'd probably expect, because let's be honest, if your team ever draws 0-0, there's 3 shots in the game, they're all off target. It's a bit hard to. It was like the other week when I've got Luke here, when we was talking about, I think it was Gillingham Walsall. Gills won 1-0. And I was sort of just stuck to what we were saying. It's like, yeah, they won. Lack of research, maybe. But anyway, I'm waffling on. We've got Luke. How are you?
I am great. Thank you very much.
I'm sure you are.
I had a wonderful trip to Wales. I wonder why. It's a shame we've got a certain host missing today, really, because I was looking forward to talking about our game. Let's put it that way.
He had the excuse that he's burnt out and the fact that he's bored, but he didn't want to come on. I mean, yeah,
not he's lost the 3 FTF teams in a row.
I mean, look, poor Kieran. I think we've just been a little bit unbearable to him at times. He must hate us. Of course, 3 games played in the FTF table, 3 defeats. The last-minute defeat to Grimsby, lost to Salford, Jake's team in the week, and have now lost to you guys. Even a controversial penalty that you got. I say that they missed one themselves, didn't they? Let's start with your game as we're going on. I was going to start with Gills, but we're talking about it now, so we might as well mention it. Newport County 1, MK Dons 2. Habib Agunye, I think, as I say, opened the scoring very early on with that. And then the 2 goals from Nathaniel Mendes-Lang from the penalty spot and another goal for Callum Patterson gave MK Dons the victory. And I say that even Bobby Camwer missed from 12 yards himself with his penalty cannoning off the post. Luke, you said you were there. I'll let you take the floor with this one.
Well, the thing is, it was an interesting start to the game for us because obviously for the first 5 minutes it's 0-0, and I think we're adjusting to a new look defence and all the rest of it, given that we're running out of fullbacks. But I was okay with the start. That is until until they obviously opened the scoring with. It was a bit of a strange one. It was just one ball they managed to get in down our left-hand side. He's taken the guy's gone for goal. It might have even been a cross, to be honest. It's taken a deflection off the main and somehow beaten McGillivray at his near post. I think he probably should save it, but obviously didn't. Put us on the back foot straight away. So disappointing start. But I think we reacted pretty well to it. They didn't have much going forward. It was going to be a case of just if we can beat the low block. And I mean, it took us a while. It certainly took us a while. I think we were taking probably one too many touches a lot of the time on the edge of the box. And then eventually, obviously, we have this whole penalty decision which is definitely a controversial one. From what I gather, it was to do with Sanders getting his shirt tugged from a corner situation. Obviously, stopped his run. He went to ground, and the ref seen enough to make the call. And obviously, refs are pulling up on this stuff quite a bit more, or at least they're trying to at the beginning of this season. It's one of those where that if you're saying that's a foul, that's probably been missed 20 other times across the pitch, at least elsewhere, like in the game. But it just so happened that he scored at that time and decided to make a bit of a statement with it. But with credit to Mendes-Lang, wonderful penalty. Didn't matter that the keeper went the right way. There's always a good sign when he wasn't even close to it and he went the right way anyway. And then from there, I think we just had enough momentum to close it out. Decent corner from Liam Kelly. Patterson snuck in behind Sanders' goal. And from there, well, I don't want to say comfortable because it was edgy. It was definitely edgy because it obviously 1 goal margin is going to be. But it's one of those where I think we kind of felt confident after that we'd just finish off the game well. Had a bit of a bath with injuries. Scott Hogan going off with concussion late in the game. Kane Thompson-Summers having to be moved up front because he pulled his groin and we were out of subs. But yeah, I mean, the important thing for us is 3 points. I don't think we necessarily played our best, but we showed the quality we have. Of course, I haven't even mentioned their penalty in all of this. It's an unfortunate one where Offord has his hand up. It probably is a pen. But Camward just can't shoot, as he'd shown a few minutes beforehand when he absolutely blazed one over the bar. And to be honest, even if it wasn't target, McGillivray saves it. So we'll take the 3 points. We move on to tougher tests.
Tougher tests. Are we just looking for a nibble from Kieran now with that one, or was that just genuine?
I mean, it was genuine, but then as I said it, I kind of realised, oh, this is going to get a bite.
Sounded very sarky. I'll be honest, but yeah, I think I expect MK Dons to win every game. Truth be told, the squad, we know we've mentioned the squad you've got a few times. I know obviously you've had a fair few injuries, but these are sort of games, the greatest respect to Newport, these are sort of games that if you want to be up there at the end of the season, you need to find a way to win. And as you mentioned, you have, even though you want it at your best. From the sounds of it anyway, I'm just going off of what you said. I've been trying to have a look at this penalty back for ages because I know that Kieran was livid with it. I think he probably still is now. And even you were confused. I remember at the time when you put how's he giving that. I'm still trying to look for it. I know you sent a tweet in that chat, but I can't open it because it limits the access. So it's quite hard for me to see it. But it just looks really, I don't know. Unless I see like a better thing of it, there probably is. I'll take your word for it. But just watching that in normal time, it probably does look really soft. But yeah, he's giving it. I feel like a lot of penalties have been given for quite soft things. You can maybe try and justify it a little bit with what you've mentioned was it an arms around Sanders or whatever you mentioned it was?
Yeah, a bit of a shirt pull as he's trying to make his run. Like I said, there's not that much in it. But I suppose from our perspective, we were due a decision to go our way. Like I said, I mean, I was complaining to no end on the opening day against Oldham when Aaron Collins got wiped out, and then I was complaining again the second game week when Hepburn Murphy had a goal disallowed for unfairly, I'd say.
Okay.
We were due one, but it does show the officiating at this level is questionable, to say the least. But I think the comments from some of the Newport fans saying, "Oh yeah, it's MK cheating it." No, it's not. That's just us beating you, to be honest. These decisions do happen. They have happened against us. It's just so happened that you guys are on the wrong end of it that time.
Well, I'm complaining about soft penalties, but I mean, Grimsby Town have literally been on the right end of pretty much all of them this season. We can't punish them, but we still get them. because we can't take penalties, which is a little bit of a concern. But anyway, that's a different discussion. But yeah, look, you've gone to Newport, tough place to go, long way from home, and picked up 3 points. Let's have a quick look at Newport. Obviously, the start of the season, okay, nothing spectacular. Obviously, they've had 3 really tough games. If we're taking FTF table out of it, Grimsby have obviously started the season like a house on fire. Salford have started relatively well and have had a couple of injuries in that time. And MK Dons, of course, is the favourites going into the season. Obviously, 3 defeats from 3 is obviously not great. You'd probably want to try and take a couple of points from those games, especially the Grimsby game. They'll be bitterly frustrated that they've not walked away with probably a point, as we've mentioned the other week, conceding so late in that one. The Salford game, they've conceded from a set piece, and then with that one, look, on another day, maybe they could have had a point. Maybe if it was different with the penalty and all that stuff, probably have deserved a little bit more from that. But 3 defeats from 3, I think, tough opposition, but is there maybe a little bit of concern at the minute? I don't know. I think it's probably harsh to say, but I've got to mention you've got to ask the question anyway. I think have they won 1 and drawn 1? They've drawn to Notts, haven't they?
1-1, drawn 1, and then the 3 losses of the other teams.
You remember who they beat? I'm just trying to go for it in my head. They beat Crawley, that's it. I've just found it. Of course, they beat them 2-1, but everyone beats Crawley at the minute.
We don't.
Oh, then, yeah, good point. Yeah, you do know it, don't you? Scott Lindsay, you legend. I just wish it was 3 points. I didn't even see you since that game. How do you feel?
It's one of those. We came from behind, didn't we? And if anything, I think they were probably more motivated for that game, or at least Lindsay would have been, because the whole thing of his time here. There were a lot of individual storylines in that game. Obviously, our players playing for them, their players playing for us. There was all sorts of other little bits as well. So it's a little bit of a distraction game, to be honest. So a point's not the worst. Obviously, I would have wanted 3, but 1 will do. It keeps the unbeaten run going. For me, that's the main thing for now. But now coming back to Newport, I'm the way I put it is I'm not too concerned for their defence. Their low block has looked, well, from what I could tell, it looked pretty solid. I think Jenkins is a strong centre back to have. He was winning quite a lot, even against Callum Patterson, which to me says something. Obviously, Sanev's made quite a lot of saves already. He must be up there for one of the most highest saves made already this season. He must be. Don't have the stats, but just based off of what I've seen with the games they've had, I think it's the final third that worries me a little bit. I don't think they've got much going forward. I know at times Kieran's been complaining about Camwell playing through the middle, and if that's the case, that would suggest that their strikers aren't necessarily at the level they need to be. I think Jed Garner came off the bench and offered very little. Reindorf had a decent chance from a 1-on-1, but a bit disappointing. And then I'd say the other major chance they had right towards the end, totally off target. So it's that final third that worries me. I'm not necessarily sure they've got enough there. They're a solid enough side and they'll be involved in games in the sense that, they're not going to get battered. They've not lost by more than 1 yet this season. But I don't think they've got enough firepower to finish games off just yet.
Yeah, I'm just looking at their squad, and you've just mentioned their forward options. If you look at their main strikers, you've got Courtney Baker-Richardson, who has not really done much, has not really impressed recently, and Kieran's got his thoughts about that. You've got Michael Reindorf, who has shown quality in patches so far, isn't it? He doesn't look too bad of an addition. And you've mentioned Jed Garner, who, didn't come with glowing reviews, to be honest. I think he's missed the last couple of games with, I think maybe a slight injury. He'd missed the last few games, but as you mentioned, he's not really come on and made much of an impact. I don't think, I think they'll certainly be in the market for at least another striker. I know you've mentioned Bobby Camler through the middle. I'm not sure he's that type of player, and certainly Kieran thinks that. But I sort of like what David Hughes has sort of done. I think Newport were way too soft last year. We all knew that, and I think they were sort of lucky in the end. There were quite a couple of teams that were worse than them because they were really poor at times last year. But now he's coming there, and it sort of feels like he's starting to implement the Newport of old, and I mean that in the sense that they look hard to beat, and that was what I took away from the from when we played them the other week. Might not look pretty, might not look eye-catching, but you can see, if they go that way, they'll certainly get results. And like I said, they were close to getting a result from us. They got a result out of Notts County, albeit they've not started the season that brilliantly. Even though then they weren't at their best in that game, and they've taken 3 points off Crawley. So I don't think, they've had 3 tough games. They've got Cambridge, Bristol Rovers, and Tranmere next. I mean, toughish games at the minute. They've all had mixed starts to the season. Well, Tranmere started pretty well, so there may be opportunities there for them to get back going. I think they do need to get going again, like picking up by some sort of result sooner rather than later. They go to Cambridge, waiting for that first. I think they haven't won away for ages, but I wouldn't raise alarm bells yet. I don't think there's really any point. There's more looking at the fixtures they played. They have had it tough last few games, but MK Dons win. You probably expected them to. I certainly expected them to. Going it, truth be told, and Kieran is in hiding. From the sounds of, I say from the sounds of things, not really, as I've mentioned in the chat earlier. Let's move on. I really wanted to look at Gillingham against Crewe, 2 sides that have started the season relatively strong. I say in Crewe's case, really strong, winning their opening 4 matches. Gillingham unbeaten in 16 going into this. They picked up a late 1-0 win through Sam Gale. I think it's Sam Dale. Sam Gale with the late goal in that one to give the Gills all 3 points, and I think it's 17 games unbeaten now for Gareth Ainsworth, and they just look like a proper unit. But I think if you Crewe, I was watching the highlights of this. We'll touch on Crewe a little bit first. So they've had an unreal start to the season. 12 points out of a possible 12. You can't get any better than that. And they've had some really good performances. That Fleetwood display in the week was terrific, and I think Lee Bell deserves the credit for what they have done. And I think on another day, he had 7 chances in the game compared to Gillingham's 17, but they hit the woodwork 3 times in that. I think they'll probably count themselves a little bit unlucky that they've not won the game, probably, let alone take a point from that. As Gillingham's goal was sort of a little bit of a mess from a corner, which has been tapped in. I think they'll be frustrated but encouraged, I think, is what I feel about Crewe from that.
I'd say that's a good assessment. They, as you said, they didn't have necessarily loads of chances. It's certainly not in comparison to Gillingham, but it's the quality of chances that we're looking at. The fact that they've hit the woodwork 3 times as well, and I certainly think that with the third one, Emre Tezgel, absolutely love him. He should have done better with that one. Absolutely had to finish that one off. I think it's just a case of it's one of those days. I think the fact that they've looked so strong going forward against the side that have been so solid defensively for quite a while, that says a lot. And although they haven't got any goals from it, I think it still says a lot about their forward line that they were, generating that level of quality in terms of the chances. And it's one of those where another day they come away as a 3-1 winners. And, it's one of those. A defeat is disappointing, of course. They were never going to go the whole season without losing a game. So the fact that that loss has come against a side that's typically quite solid, and they still very nearly put them to the sword a little bit. I don't think there's any shame in that at all. I don't think there's much to be concerned about for me with Crewe. It's just one of those days.
Yeah, and they're going to happen eventually. I think this run was always going to end sooner rather than later. Doesn't doesn't hide the terrific start that they've had, because I've always said that Crewe needed to start fast. They certainly have started fast. Probably a little bit unlucky on the day that happens. They play Swindon next week, in which they'll want a response. But they've scored 10 goals already this season from the 5 games. That's a joint most with both MK Dons and Grimsby, who have both also scored 10 goals themselves. Look at us, we're goal scoring machines. But just the 3 goals conceded from Crewe. Only MK Dons have conceded less goals than them. Gillingham have conceded the same amount of goals as well, them being just the 3. I beg your pardon. Tranmere have conceded 2 as well, but they've played a game less. Looking at that, but we need to talk about Gillingham up to 5th after 5 games, 11 points picked up, 3 wins, 2 draws to start the season. I was humming and ahhing about their result against Chesterfield in midweek, that 4-1 victory. It felt like a real statement result, that against a side that are favoured to do real good this season and have started the season really well as well. And of course, they've just found a way to beat Crewe, and that's what good sides do. And that's what Gareth Ainsworth do. How much credit does he deserve? I mean, 17 games unbeaten, I think, in League 2 now. Granted, a fair few of them, or quite a lot of them, dating back to last season, are draws, but it's a good habit to be in. You know, you're not losing games. It's certainly a good mindset going into it, and they're just a tough nut to crack. You know what a Gareth Ainsworth side is like. They get in your faces. They're bullies. I just think he suits this Gillingham side right down to a T. I've always had my doubts with Gillingham in terms of goal scoring, etc. Maybe 1 or 2 still questions about that, albeit, you know, the 4 goals scored, or you look at it, 2 were penalties. You maybe do question it a little bit, probably not as much though. But, you know, if they're not conceding goals at the other end, if they're just even finding the 1 goal to win games, maybe they might not complain too much. Of course, you want to be winning games quite a little bit more comfortably. Probably. I mean, you're not complaining with a late winner in that. But yeah, how much credit does he deserve? As I mentioned, 17 games unbeaten since he's come in after leaving Shrewsbury, when they were pretty much all sort of just left him in the lurk a little bit when it looked like they were going down anyway. Yeah, they started the season pretty well.
They absolutely have. And to be fair, that unbeaten run actually goes all the way back to when John Coleman was in charge. His last couple of games were draws, I believe. And I mean, they've scored in all of the games under Ainsworth as well. So it's a case of he's kind of found a solution to both ends of the pitch, as it were. Obviously, you know, you don't want to draw 46 games or anything like that, because 46 games, 1 point each, that's 46 points. That's not enough on its own. You have to be able to convert them. But at a bare minimum, they are competitive, and they're going to make sure it's a close game. I think the only thing I now want to see is, well, like we saw with the Chesterfield game, I want to see them, you know, go and get the extra goal. Don't make it quite that edgy. Obviously, it's fantastic that they can be so resolute at the back, and so incredibly tough to break down. As annoying as it is, because it's Ainsworth. Tell who I support, but without comment. But no. Yeah, I think that they're set up nicely. It would be nice to see him score a couple more, but at the same time, it's working for him, and it's just one of those things. If it's not broke, don't fix it. I suppose the interesting thing now will be to see how they fare against sides that also like a little bit of a physical game. You know, will they still hold that level of resoluteness? Maybe not a word. But you know, will they still be that strong defensively when a side tries to out Gillingham? It is kind of the way I put it.
So you mentioned that. I've just looked at their next couple of games. Their next league game, they make the trip to Oldham. 4 draws out of 5 for them, and you see now Mickey Mellon sets his team. So you see that the plays that they have done, they might do that. But also the game after that, taking out Fulham with the 21s in the virtue mode or whatever it's called nowadays. They go to Bromley after that. Now there's the perfect game for that, I think. If you want to look at it.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're looking at those couple of games and some of the individuals in those teams as well, and you're thinking, okay, this is a bit more of a direct matchup. Because with Chesterfield, obviously, we look at them as one of the strongest divisions in the side, but they're a totally different style of play to Gillingham. It's very much expansive possession football against anti-football, for want of a better term. When they're faced with a more direct sort of threat, as in, okay, this is one physical side against another physical side, will they still come out on top? And I think that's what interests me with Gillingham.
Good stuff. Let's move on. Let's go to Swindon, actually, because boy oh boy, there's been some news. I say for both these teams, well, there's for Swindon anyway. Let's mention the game first. Aaron Drennan put the hosts 1-0 up in the 7th minute. And we go all the way to the 90th minute, where it looked like Callum Stewart thought they'd rescued a point for Shrewsbury, who have really not had the best of starts to the season. Certainly, they've certainly not hit League Two in the best of terms at the minute. Stewart thought he'd have rescued a point, only for Billy Bowden summer signing to find the winner in the 93rd minute. I mean, let's start with Swindon. I mean, again, they're another side that have just found a way where it looked like they were, I say down and out with the equaliser. It could take the stuffing out of them being so late, but against probably the Shrewsbury side at the minute where they're certainly low on confidence, I think is probably the right thing to say. And probably for the fact that I don't think their squad is very good. That's 12 goals they've conceded. But Swindon, they've found a way to win and they've got themselves 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, with Swindon, they're an interesting case for me. Obviously, that opening goal, beautiful team goal, obviously finished by Drennan, but a lovely move, and that shows the attacking capacity that they've got. And I think that's the side of things they're strong. They're strong at, even without Harry Smith available. Although that could become a bit more problematic over time. We'll have to wait and see on that one. It's just that I feel like with Swindon, the attacking quality comes at the expense of defending well. So if you're a side that can attack well, you can outscore them, or you can hold them off and then go and score one down the other end. And I think that's kind of exposed a little bit by the fact that Shrewsbury were able to compete, and I think this is probably the closest they've been to looking like a side that could actually maybe win a game this season. I think they've made hard work of it. I appreciate the fight to get that winner after the late setback, but I think they've made life incredibly tough for themselves, more so than it needed to be when they're facing a side that's struggled so far this season. So yes, they got the win. That's great. 3 points is the most important thing. But I do have a few sort of creeping concerns with them, just because with a side that's out of form and it's downbeat at Shrewsbury at the minute. You've got to put that game to bed long before then.
Yeah, but a lot probably is. I mean, that's their first goal actually is really nice. Swindon, from what I remember recalling, and maybe you're right, but I think some good moments in the game. Great for Billy Bowden. Of course, it has been at Swindon in the past for him to get his first goal since returning to the club. That late on just feels like the perfect sort of welcome back in a sense. I think he has played a couple of games though, but it sort of felt really fitting. I do raise your concerns. Of course, when they're on it, Swindon are a very fun team to watch, and they've had some good wins this season. Already beating Cambridge, they're beating Oldham, which is a good result. But they've also had those moments in which they haven't been so great. We look at the Walsall defeat, probably the better side for a lot of that, and they've let themselves down right at the end with some terrible defending. Barnet the other night sounded like a really poor performance, in which they've conceded 2 goals in the last 5 minutes, and they've conceded another goal in this one, the 8-on-8. So they've scored 8 goals and they've also conceded 8, of course, giving them a goal difference of 0. But they have won 3 of their 5 games. We give them on 9 points to 8. I mean, it's all great when you're winning games, but if you conceded at the other end, it's also a little bit of a question. And also, we should probably mention, as much as they're still scoring goals, I mean, 8 goals already, not terrible. We should probably mention the news about Harry Smith. I did mention in the week that he looks like he picked up a really bad injury against Barnet, sorry, and it looked like he could be out for a while. It was confirmed the other day that he's ruptured his ACL and he's going to be out for the season. We've mentioned, of course, he's Ian Holloway's talisman. He's always been adamant he won't sell for any price, even if Manchester City come knocking. This Danish team has sort of tested their resolve a little bit and have put in a relatively high bid for someone who's out of contract at the end of the season. They've turned that down, and he's gone and done his ACL in this game, and that will really test him now because they need to fill the void. They probably do need to bring in another striker now. That's what I feel anyway. But he just feels very focal to everything that Ian Holloway wanted to do and wants to do. And of course, it was terrific for Swindon last season. Let's not beat around the bush. I know he's whacked him at centre-half a few times near the end of the games because obviously his height, his physicality, he can add a football and all that stuff. But there's no getting around it. It's a big, big loss. And you did maybe look at it in a few ways. Maybe should you have taken the cash? Possibly not. Of course, you want to keep your best players. It's just very unfortunate. I think the good thing about it is the fact that they're still in a transfer window and have got time to maybe get something in. But I don't think whatever they do won't be anywhere near as good as the impact of what Harry Smith has. It's a blow for him as well. After the good season that he's had, he's clearly got the faith in the gaffer. It's awful news for him. And of course, it's a long road to recovery. It seems to have been a fair few ACL injuries. I think, is it Ben Perry at Colchester has also done one as well, which is just the worst type of injury you have. But it rips the page out of everything Holloway wants, truth be told. I think he's that big.
Yeah, I'd say that's totally fair. And I think that comes back to what I was saying before about they're so good at attacking, but it can come at the expense of defending. And with someone like Harry Smith, you've got someone that not only is going to be a fantastic target man, but someone that's going to put the ball in the back of the net as well. So you've always got the option of outscoring teams. Without the guy that's going to put the ball in the back of the net quite as often as he does, can you still do that? Can you still go out and out attack and then just hope you can outscore teams without someone like that in your team? And I think that's where the problem is. It's not just the fact they've got to replace the target man, it's the fact they've got to replace the goals as well. And that can be extremely tricky to do in League Two anyway. It's probably even more tricky in the last week of the transfer window in League Two. So it's quite the conundrum for them. I'm not going to say, they should have sold him or anything like that, because ultimately, if Smith is fit, he's probably their star player, and you want to keep hold of your star players. So it's just one of those you look back on in hindsight and be like, maybe things would have worked out in our favor if he hadn't, if we'd just got rid of him instead of him getting injured. But you can't predict that. You can't preempt that one, unfortunately. So it's a tricky one for them to fix, and they've got a week to come up with a solution.
Yeah, absolutely. It is what it is. It's just very unfortunate.
To celebrate the start of the new season, the 4 Tier Fever podcast has teamed up with Sky Bet to celebrate the world's wildest emotional rollercoaster, being a football fan. Sky Bet understands the beautiful chaos of being a football fan. It'll lift you up, it'll break you down, and it'll stitch you back together again with those little bits of hope. Because for all the pain of a looming relegation or missed penalty, there's nothing quite like the absolute scenes after a last-minute winner that leaves you hugging people you've never met in your life. For me, We've had relegations out of the Football League and we've had demotions in our time, but I'd happily go through that again just to relive those unbelievable high memories of back-to-back promotions at the home of English football, although I hope we don't get relegated anytime soon. Being a fan isn't for everyone. Some people say it's just a game and question why we shout at the TV or standing in the pouring rain just to see our team lose 1-0. But to those who get it, there's nothing quite like it. The highs, the lows, the heartache and the glory, it's all part of the ride. And is it worth it? You bet it is. Not for everyone. For the fans. Sky Bet, 18 plus, begambleaware.org.
Let's touch on Shrewsbury real quick. I'm at a point where I just feel sorry for them. I just feel sorry for their fans. It just seems like one thing after another at the minute. They've made an abysmal start to the season. They don't look dominant in games. They rarely assorted their dominance. I think I've read something that since taking over the club, Michael Appleton has won 1 in 25. And that's not a good look. I think that's right. I could be wrong with that, but that was just something I read. I think we all sort of knew that they'd struggle this season. I think I did see 1 or 2 wild shouts for them to that they might do okay, but they just look totally devoid of anything at the minute. And they've come from League One. They're relegated with a bit of a whimper last year, and they're transferring it to League Two. I think if you I don't think replacing Appleton does any good. I've mentioned a few times. I just think they're sort of broken in a sense. I think it stems higher up than the manager, but 1 point picked up from 5, and they've really looked unconvincing and have rarely looked convincing in any games. I mean, Notts County losing 4-1 to them in the week, and that was a Notts side in which, again, have started the season relatively slow themselves. I mean, there's big concerns already 5 games in. I certainly think so anyway.
Oh yeah. I mean, there have to be concerns at this stage. I know it's early to call it, but it's just the nature of the defeats. And as I was saying earlier, it felt like they were perhaps a little bit closer in terms of the chances they were creating, but at the same time, they were 1-0 down for 8 minutes in, and were for another 81 minutes essentially, before eventually getting a goal that then didn't mean anything anyway because they went and conceded again 3 minutes later. It's like I say, it's closer, but it's not even remotely close enough. I mean, this game as an exception is I suppose Michael Appleton must have been to the Mike Williamson School of Winning Games on XG, because they did just about.
There, is he?
Well, maybe so. But unfortunately,
you got me excited. I thought he might maybe.
But no, sadly they don't get any points for that, and I think it all just comes back down to mentality. And I know you said there that perhaps changing Appleton, or getting rid of Appleton in favour of someone else, wouldn't change anything. At this stage, perhaps not, because it is quite early. But longer term, give it another few weeks. If they haven't at least found that first win, just that any shred of positivity, then there comes a point where you do have to make the change. And if someone does come in, it has to be a motivator. It can't be a tactician. It can't be anyone else, because they've got good players in that squad. There's more than enough individual talent in that squad to perform better than they are right now. But they need someone that's going to motivate them to actually go and get those results by hook or by crook. Any means necessary. You just have to get the results, and you can think about style of play or anything else later.
I mean, you mentioned motivator. That's how I'd describe it all the way. Actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I think it's right we share these concerns, but I think he's certainly got to feel under some pressure. And I think the players do as well. I don't think they've given anywhere near enough what they started the season anyway. Let's have a look at Notts Bromley, the high-scoring game of the day, 2-2. It finished. And first of all, we need to talk about Matt Dennis, of course, former MK Dons, as you'd know, did all right at Carlisle in the second half of last season. Scored 6 goals in 14 appearances for them. Scored 4 in 5 already for the Magpies. I mean, his first goal in particular was pretty good, to say the least, and he's hit the ground running very quickly.
He has, and I'll tell you what, I'm happy for him because he was one of my favourite players whilst he was at Dons, even though he wasn't particularly favoured. The question with him for me was never ability; it was attitude, and he hasn't necessarily always had that right mentality. And it looks like he's finding his feet again, which is great to see. And I believe he's definitely up there as one of the top scorers in the league already. Obviously, early days, but he's playing with confidence in a side that probably isn't all that confident right now, based off the way they've started the season. And as you say, that first goal is just, well, it's pure quality, but it's also willpower because it's a proper solo effort. And then the second one was obviously a set piece situation, perhaps a little bit fortunate, but still very good header. But I suppose for me, the concern with Notts, although I did have a little bit of concern over them losing McGoldrick and this whole situation with Jatta and all the rest of it. It's more at the back because defensively they look a shell of themselves, and given that they weren't that good defensively to begin with, that has to be a bigger concern. I know some fans were concerned about the levels of Platt and Badau not playing necessarily as well as you'd expect. I think the first goal shows that quite well. I don't think either of them covered themselves in glory with that first one. But then the second one frustrates me as well. They obviously lost Alex Bass and replaced him with Kelly Roos. And his positioning for that second goal, abysmal. I can't sugarcoat it because he just never repositioned. Like when the ball had gone into a new phase, he was still stood the totally wrong side of the goal, and that's ultimately the source of them conceding a second time. It was just a totally unnecessary one. However, to give them credit, I do think Bromley are a strong side, and so far they're certainly proving that this season. So there are signs of life with Notts. It's just I think they've still got a lot of problems they've got to kind of work around.
Yeah, I think I certainly can get behind. There's still a lot of work to do. Matthew Dennis is the top goal scorer in the league at present with 4 goals. Quite a number of players have scored 3 goals. I've noticed Callum Patterson and Jace Cabia 4 goals. Although Jace Cabia could have had 5 if he's missed 2 penalties in 3 matches. But we'll talk about that later. I share your point with the goals. I think for the Bromley goals in particular, the Ben Thompson one looked pretty poorly defended, I'll be honest. I don't see Matty Platt in the lineup. I know you've mentioned him. I think he got injured at Barrow, from what I recall.
Yes, you may be right. I was just going off of fan reaction.
I can understand where you're going from. I mean, they still had Bedo was playing, and as well as they had a back three of McDonnell and a Joffrey. So, yeah, the defending for Bromley's first was unconvincing. And, I mean, you mentioned about Calarus for Bromley's equaliser for 2-2. It just feels like for the goals that I have seen Notts concede this season, there's been a couple of times, I just feel like he's been glued to his goal line. I don't think he's anywhere near as brave enough. And you mentioned his positioning. I think, yeah, I certainly echo those. I'm just not convinced with him. I wasn't convinced on the signing. It was big boots to fill, or big gloves to fill, as we probably put it that way, than being a goalkeeper. Alex Bass was, I'd go as far to say, top 3 easily in the league. I sound like the Panthers, I don't know, easy top 3. But he was. I rated Bass highly. Whereas for Kel Roos, I just don't think, yes, got great experience at higher level. He's played for Derby County in the Championship and all that sort of stuff. Has played in the Scottish Prem with Aberdeen. But it just didn't feel like the right fit. And it just never has. And I think some of the goals that they have conceded, I just don't feel like are good enough for a player like him. But he's always had shaky moments. Even for Derby, I remember the playoff final against Villa. He sort of let one in, which was really poor. I always had my doubts with the signs at the time, but certainly a lot of work to do. I think they've had a fair few injuries. Someone like Dennis hitting the ground running, certainly a positive, but there's certainly much more to do. I think I think they've improved a tad. I mean, them winning 4-1 in a week, albeit against a very poor side in Shrewsbury, was certainly encouraging. If you saw their fourth goal in the week, actually, against Shrewsbury, that was a very nice goal. I think Conor Grant scored that one. Very lovely goal. Go and watch that if you haven't seen it. But yeah, we haven't mentioned Bromley at all. It's probably a solid point away from home. They'll lose in the game on 2 occasions from that. You probably take it in the grand scheme of things, and of course it keeps their unbeaten run going. 9 points picked up from the 5 games, 3 wins, 2 draws. Like we've mentioned it before, they were very close to beating Fleetwood, and then of course the Notts game where you probably do take the point in the grand scheme of things. But Bromley, they're another side that just a very well-run club and just a very good start to the season that they've had, and you're really seeing what Andy Woodman's all about. I mean, we know that anyway because we were wax lyrical about how good he is on the pod anyway. But Bromley to be one of the unbeaten sides in the division at the minute out of a certain few. Very positive start for them, and I think they'll probably take that every day of the week considering the circumstances.
For sure you would. And, to come from behind twice, that shows a fantastic fighting spirit, albeit a little disappointing to go behind in the first place a couple of times. But I think that what I want to praise with Bromley is I've mentioned this already on previous episodes, they're becoming less dependent on Michael Cheek. The goals are coming from various sources now. I know, I think both goals in this case were variations of set pieces, but that can be such a strength in this league. And you look at even just the goals from across the league over the weekend, how many of them were set pieces? There's quite a lot, and that seems to be the case quite often in this league. So for them, that's a real positive that they're able to regularly attack set pieces well, and it's not just one man to target. Frustrating, obviously, not to win, but to go away and come away with a point against a side that have just had a big result. I don't think you can complain too much at all, really. And as you say, it's that unbeaten run continues, and if you can't win, don't lose.
And that's certainly them. I certainly echo your points of the goal scorers in their team. Of course, Michael Cheek gets most of the headlines. He scores loads of goals. We all know that by now. But I always felt that they had goals throughout the team anyway. I always felt that last season at times as well. They had some players that can probably create something and just pop up with something that has maybe come from a goal like they scored in the first one. But it's a very positive start to the season for them, and they should be very pleased with that. And they'll probably, if I'm a Bromley fan, it certainly looked like I'd probably be content with a point from there. 2 more games to look at properly in detail, and we'll run through the other ones very quickly. Let's have a look at Bristol Rovers. Of course, they picked up their first victory of the season, 5th time lucky. They beaten Cambridge United by 1-0. Ellis Harrison with the goal on 34 minutes, with the U's being reduced to 10 men very late in the game for a second yellow card from Mamadou Job. They've had to bide their time. They've not been convincing at times, have Bristol Rovers. But a 1-0 win through Ellis Harrison, a clean sheet, and they've gone and picked up their first 3 points of the season.
Yeah, I think this was closer to the Bristol Rovers I was expecting to see when I predicted them to finish second. Obviously, still a lot of work to go to become that side, but this was a significant improvement. It's not just a clean sheet. They've restricted Cambridge to 0 shots on target. That is a huge improvement. Obviously, great to see Ellis Harrison get his goal. He's obviously spent time with us last season and a couple of seasons as well. And yeah, I feel like he's someone that always deserved the chance. Always looked like a good League Two striker. So it's good to see him finally get his goal and hopefully carry on doing well on his return to Bristol Rovers. And to be fair, that wasn't the only chance of the game. They had a few other ones, and they maybe could have scored more and won that game by a larger margin based off the chances they did create. But still, it's the first win that was always the big thing. It's not how you win or how many goals you win by, just that you win. And I think that's going to do them a world of good, just to get that result, that bit of positivity. We were talking about that earlier with Shrewsbury. Just getting that one result can shift momentum in a huge way. And I think we could well start to see an upturn in form with Bristol Rovers.
Yeah, very much could do. I think, look, they've got, I mean, they did pick up 1 point before that game, but the fact that they've now got that first win, I think it's certainly a huge monkey off their back. I think the longer they went without that win, I think more concerns might have been raised a little bit. Probably not in the sense of some of the other teams, but as I always thought that Bristol Rovers could pick up. But I think a result like that is hugely important. You've mentioned Cambridge, 0 shots on target. Obviously, Ellis Harrison's scoring, which is pleasing for him, and of course, someone that Bristol Rovers that know very well. And it's certainly a positive result. But more importantly, it's something to build on. And the next thing for them is, can they build on that? And I'm quite scared because their next game is against Grimsby Town, and we'll probably mention this in the preview show in the week. But I quite like beating them. Look, it'll be our first meeting since that day at Wembley in 2015. I won't mention much more from that, but and look, probably for their sakes, they'll probably want to go and win that. But just for the sake of how they've started the season, it certainly gives them something to really build on now and sort of hopefully put the start that they have done to sort of once to one side a little bit. Obviously, they can't really change what they've the start that they've had. They have struggled in the first few games, but it's certainly something that they can certainly look forward to now. Hopefully, put that start to one side and just hopefully build for the future now. And that result certainly goes a long way for that. I think for Cambridge in the game, I think there was one chance I saw watching the highlights in which I think if you had that little bit more composure, I think they probably could have equalised. It's sort of like mishit it from a low cross, which is frustrating for them. And as you've mentioned, 0 shots on target. They've made an okay start to season. I don't think they've been spectacular by any means. They've beaten they're beating Cheltenham. They've not beaten themselves. They're beating Cheltenham. They're beating Colchester in the week, which was a very good result, coming from behind as well at Colchester's place. So we started the season pretty slowly. I know I mentioned it the other day, but they really have started slowly the other day as well. But then you've got the likes of they've drawn to Barrow. They've drawn to Harrogate, even not Barrow. I'm confusing Colchester with Cambridge now. They drew with Harrogate as well. Obviously, they've lost that game to Bristol Rovers, and of course, they've lost that game to Swindon. They've had a bit of a mixed bag at the minute. 6 goals scored, 6 conceded. It's just been very okay. 7 points picked up. It's just been very okay, isn't it?
Solid yet unspectacular is probably the way I'd describe them. I think the chance you were referencing earlier was probably the Killeen Kouassi one. For me, he had to do a lot better with that one. But beyond that chance, I don't think they actually really created that much, at least not in terms of high quality chances that you really think would go in. They had the few half chances here or there, but the quality of chances just isn't good enough at the minute, is what I'm trying to say there. And I think that's kind of been the case in quite a few of the games they've played. Obviously, they've controlled some of these games quite well, and they've got to the final third well enough. I'm just not necessarily convinced that they've got the final ball in them just yet to reliably put chances away and put games to bed. Obviously, they have had some more positive results than this one, as you were saying, but I think there are weaknesses, like some clear weaknesses in this side at the minute that will need ironing out over the coming months. They're not a side I'm overly worried about because I do think there is quality in that side, but there are certainly things that do need to improve, and they've got a chance to do that because I think they've got Newport next, which for me that's an interesting game. Just based off Newport's obviously had a little bit of a struggle just to finish results off. Same for Cambridge. So for me, something's got to give here. Surely one of them is gonna really take this game by the scruff of the neck. But that's one for the preview show.
Yeah, of course, you're right about Newport. They do have the next, and as you mentioned for the preview show, I know we've mentioned Newport. I mean, 3 defeats in a row, as we've mentioned to them, albeit to sides that have started the season relatively strong. And then you've got Cambridge on the other hand, who will probably want a response more than anything, with them being at home. So, as you mentioned, probably something does have to give in that one. It'll be 0-0 now. We said that, and that'll probably what will be predicted in the week whoever does that. But no, I do agree. There's a couple of issues that do need to be sort of resolved, but I don't think they're mega issues. Truth be told, they've just been a bit steady Eddie, of course, going off the 5 games in, and 7 points is not a terrible return either way. Of course, you can be in much worse positions. You could be in the shoes of Cheltenham Town, as we're going to get into in our last game. They've played Barnet in this one, and Barnet have walked away with a 1-0 victory. Ollie Hawkins with the only goal of the game in that one, and that was scored in the 62nd minute to give Barnet all 3 points. We'll touch on Barnet first. Of course, they had a difficult start back into life in League Two. 3 defeats from their opening 3 games, conceding 6 goals and only scoring the 1 goal, and that was against Walsall. But you know, they've had a very good week. 2 victories from 2, going to Swindon, scoring 2 goals, winning the game 2-0, keeping a clean sheet. Going to Cheltenham yesterday, winning 1-0, keeping a clean sheet. So they finally got their season up and running.
They have, and I mean, to be fair, I think they took a little bit of time to get going in this one, but once they did, they looked very, very good. And you know, obviously they only scored the 1. I think it probably could have been more, but they controlled the game from probably halfway through first half onwards. You know, I think as Cheltenham grew out of the game, Barnet grew into it. Which I don't know. It just comes back down to the result, doesn't it? Barnet just needed, I don't know, a little bit of something just to get them going again. I don't think they've been. Oh well, they've obviously not been as strong as we were perhaps expecting them to be just yet, but they're showing signs that they could become that. It's more just now I need to see them go and put in a strong performance against someone else. You know, less of the mistakes, and you know, it needs to be high confidence gameplay against a stronger side. Because with all due respect to Cheltenham, as things stand, they've kind of been the whipping boys of the division. But positive signs for Barnet so far.
Yeah, we'll touch them in a minute. I think I've mentioned, certainly on the last few, I don't think Barnet have been bad in these games. I think maybe on another day, they probably could have got more from those games. You can certainly see what they're trying to do, what their system is. It's what works for them so well in the National League. And yes, it has taken maybe a little bit of time. They've had these results. Yes, they've happened. They've had a fair few errors in those games, and you can't really do much about it now. But I think it was more just a case of finding their feet, and then I feel like it's been a real positive week for that. It'll certainly give. I think confidence is probably what you're looking for. It's not so much for a crisis as such, but you know, 2 wins from the week, as we've mentioned, I think it'll certainly go a long way. You know, you've mentioned the sort of games they've got. Colchester coming up next, who have started the season relatively slow themselves, and you see the next few games after that. They've got Shrewsbury, who of course are massively struggling. They've got Crewe, albeit lost yesterday, have started the season very well. They've also got Grimsby coming up, of course, another side that started the season very well. And they've also got the side that came up with them in the National League at the end of September in Oldham, who are yet to pick up a win themselves, as we've mentioned. So there's certainly some tests in there. Certainly some games in which you probably do expect them to pick up some points. I'm looking at the Shrewsbury game. You probably mentioned the Colchester game at the minute with how they've started. But, I mean, Oldham probably as well. Crewe, Grimsby, that'll be 2 pretty tough games in terms of how they've started at the moment. Of course, they're not until a few weeks, so that could change. But we need to talk about Cheltenham. Look, it's looking very rare. I don't really know what I was getting with that, but it's looking pretty bleak with them in terms of the league. 5 matches played, 0 wins, 0 draws, 5 defeats, 1 goal scored, 11 conceded. And in terms of points, they still haven't got any. I think they're one of 3 sides in the whole EFL that are yet to pick up a single point. Worries on the pitch, I've got to say.
Yeah, put perfectly there. And they like I said, they started this game reasonably well. They looked like they were going to be up for the fight. And I suppose with the positive news of the whole takeover, I suppose that's to be expected. But then the quality didn't quite come with that. So they had 11 shots. One of those was on target. From the chances they had, it had to be more than one. It really had to be. They had a chance with this game. Barnet, obviously, we were saying, their results haven't necessarily been as positive as they would have hoped. So this was a chance to, really capitalise, and they just didn't. It's a case of they had their chances, they missed them. Barnet come along, find their feet, they take their chances, and that's it. But yeah, I suppose with Cheltenham, it is now just looking at the bigger picture, obviously, with the whole takeover. How much are they going to be able to change? Is that going to be enough change? Is that going to be too much change? How much instability is that going to cause on the pitch and off the pitch? Are people going to be cautious over their jobs? This sort of thing. I know that's probably something that we look back on at Dons. Obviously, we had the whole takeover last season, and although we were thinking, oh yeah, best thing ever, we've got loads of money now. Actually, there's a lot of moving parts, and it's not necessarily going to click straight away. So it's a tricky one. They've got 1 week left now with the transfer window to do whatever they can with that. And if they can hold on to your Thomases, your Archers of the world, then great. If they can give them a bit more support, then even better. But it's still a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of change there as well. And like I said, that instability can be problematic. It's just whether the takeover becomes a distraction from the football. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I think the relief now is the fact that it's done. I know we've mentioned this a few weeks, that we knew that Mike Garlick was close to taking over, the former Burnley owner, and obviously that was completed yesterday before the game. On one sense, probably relief that's now done, and they can start to move forward. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of change there, and you mentioned the squad as it is at the minute, and everything around it. Just over a week left of the transfer window, and I still think they need to do quite a fair bit. I really do. I think we'll have a look at the main outgoings in a minute. But I look at their strikers in particular. You've got Lee Angol, you've got George Miller, and you've got Jake Bickerstaff. Is that his name? I don't see many goals in those front three, truth be told. George Miller's a workhorse from what I have seen. And might not pop up with a few. Lee Angol, got 7 goals for Morecambe last season. Can maybe pitch in with 1 or 2, and I think we mentioned and Bickerstaff obviously spent time at Wrexham. Didn't really do much there. I think he spent most of his career in non-league. Although he did have a spell at Accrington more recently. He was last with Altrincham last season in non-league, scoring 2 goals in 24 appearances. I think you look at that, and I think it does say what it sort of says quite a fair bit, to be fair. You mentioned about with Archer and Jordan Thomas. I think Jordan Thomas picked up an injury yesterday. I think he's done his shoulder, and from what I've seen on social media, he was apparently in tears. And from what I've heard and what I've read, it doesn't sound good for him. So maybe that injury might scupper his chances of getting a move this month. Which is obviously devastating for him, because I think it probably would have done. And we've mentioned Ethan Archer as well. I don't think the interest from Peterborough is going away. I know they've been taken over as such, but I'll still be surprised if he's a Cheltenham player by the end of it. with that sort of interest, although Peterborough aren't doing too well in League One themselves at the minute. But that's just the way they go, isn't it? They invest in young players, hoping that they grow. And look, Ethan Archer's an exceptional talent, but even then they need more. They just need more, really. I guess maybe with this takeover, it might, like I said, the distraction's gone there for the fact that, you know, it's been ongoing for a little bit. The fact it's now done, I'm intrigued to see what Cheltenham do. I think they have to be busy. I don't think there's any way that you say that they can't be. And they've just got a lot of work to do, because ultimately the proof's in the pudding. They've lost all 5 of their games and they've scored 1 goal. It's nowhere near good enough. Albeit you do look at the sides they've played. We've mentioned that they've had some tough games. They played Chesterfield early on and they played MK Dons early on. All right, fine. You probably don't expect many points from them, of course. But recently they played Bromley and lost. Of course, they played Barnet and lost yesterday. And I can't remember the other game they've played. The Cambridge opening day, that was it. And they've lost to them as well. It's just not a good look. And I do think questions do have to be asked about Michael Flynn. I think we've got to this stage already. I think if we're asking it about Michael Appleton at Shrewsbury, I think we've certainly got to do the same with Flynn. It'll be interesting to see if they stick with him or twist this new ownership. I think from the sounds of things, they've been quite supportive of Flynn anyway throughout this whole period as they've tried to take over the club. But I think he's got to be under pressure, because this start's been nowhere near good enough. I don't think these players have been nowhere near good enough. And I don't think it's getting much easier. They've got Salford next, which is another tough game in itself. But you see the games coming up. Actually, after Salford. They've got Accrington, who, albeit have played a game less, have not started incredibly. Crawley haven't started that great. And Oldham, who have yet to pick up a win, of course, as we've mentioned themselves, but do look relatively solid. But I just struggle to see the quality. I struggle to see how they're going to score goals. I struggle to see how they're going to win games. 5 games in, I think you've got every right to be concerned at the minute. There's a lot of questions that need answers in quite a short space of time over at that football club at the minute. And I think that's my biggest issue.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to add there, to be fair. I think it's a good summary. It's just a whole lot of change, and it just comes back to the point about stability for me. It's a case of there's just no quick fix. I suppose it's like, even if they bring in all these players and all the rest of it, they're not going to get results straight away. Of course they're not. They might get the odd one here or there, but to shift the mentality and all the rest of it, all that other side of the game, it's going to take time. So I think at least the next couple of months for me, regardless of what they do, are probably going to be quite rough. It's just whether they can then build on it after that for me.
Absolutely. I'm interested to see how it goes. But they certainly need to pick up. That's for sure. Let's have a quick look at the other games real quick. We'll run through these real quickly, as I know we've been running for over an hour. Really good discussions in those games, actually. Walsall picked up a 1-0 win against Salford City. Harrison Burke with the only goal of the game in that one. Looked like a pretty deserving victory as Walsall had 18 shots to Salford 6. Perfect way to respond after losing to Grimsby the other night. And a good win for them against a solid side. I know they've been hampered by injuries, a couple of stuff. Salford have made a couple of decent signings in the week. Michael Rose was one that caught my eye. Experienced defender in the Championship, let alone League Two. It looked like a very good pickup. We've mentioned Grimsby. They drew 1-1 with Accrington. I'll tell you what, I saw some sights yesterday. Going to the Accrington game, there was an instance where a fan set off a pyro in front of a church. Hell, I've even got to see the Accrington soapbox race outside of Spoons. That was entertaining. I'm drifting away now. In terms of the game, pretty frustrating one from us. The stats look relatively even, but you look at the chances we did miss in the game. Evan Corey missed a sitter in the first half, and Jace Cabia had another penalty saved. 2 penalty saves in the last 3 games. In that one, albeit he did score in the first half from a lovely ball from Reece Staunton, who looked very good yesterday. Actually, he's got some delivery on him, and if that's the sort of deliveries that we're expecting from him, then he's going to pick up loads of assists next season. he's a little. He does seem a little bit better than Denver Hume in that sense. So the fact that he's actually half decent at defending as well. In that, but we did pick up the 3 points. We only walked away with one. Tyler Walton with the goal. He's got an awful surname. Sorry, Jack. I really wish it sort of want him for that reason. The goal came from a cross from a drop ball, and he had a goal disallowed for offside right at the end after as well. Probably was offside, but yeah, it just feels like a missed opportunity for us there. We created some good chances in that, but you sense that when they did equalise, we didn't really have much of an answer in that, which was basically disappointing, truth be told. I was quite frustrated with that point in the end, as truth be told, we're better than them, and we are a better side than them, but fair play to them. I know it sounds very big-headed of me, but we just sort of were. We just were. Just got Man United on Wednesday night. It's all right, and after their performance today, easy game to respond to. Let's have a look at the others. What else happened? Colchester lost again. They lost 2-0 at home to Barrow, Jack Earing, and Lewis Shipley with another goal from him, winning the game for Andy Wing's side. Very good result for Barrow. They've had a couple of decent results, and they've had some not so decent results as of late. Andy Wing called their performance at Harrogate the other night rubbish, and I think he'll be delighted that they've gone to Colchester, tough place to go, and have picked up 3 points. The fact that Colchester are looking at it, 24 shots in the game, 6 on target, and they haven't scored. Again, they've started the season relatively slow. So 5 points picked up from the first 5 goals scored, 6 conceded. But they were sort of like that last year as well, from what I remember. Not a great result for them. And not a great result for Crewe. They lost 2-0 at home to Tranmere. Nathan Smith on the score sheet, and another goal for Amari Patrick. I was in awe of Amari Patrick the other week. I was singing his praises, and he's already gone and scored another belter. He is some player. I genuinely love him. I'm showing him more love, I think, than probably what Jack does at the minute. It sort of feels that way, but I think it's certainly quite a few concerns you've got to raise about Crawley. 1 point picked up from the first 5, 2 goals scored, 9 conceded. Very good performance from Tranmere, it looks like, and they've walked away with 3 points there, and a good win for them. Oldham and Fleetwood, it was at Fleetwood. It finished 1-1. Ched Evans with the goal on 12 minutes, with Regan Ogle equalising on 44. Oldham had 22 chances in the game. I think there was a couple dodgy decisions in that one, without a penalty or something, I can't remember, but it finishes a draw in that one. And of course, we should probably mention Harrogate 1, Chesterfield 2. Or should probably mention Ronan Darcy. I mean, that goal, we've not really given it the time and space it deserves, but that is just pure filth. If you can go and see it, if you haven't watched it, he sent about 3-4 defenders there for hot dogs. It's just how calmly he's just put it in the back of the net. It's a very nice goal. Genuinely, if it was Messi that scored that, we'd be talking about it for ages. We just would. It's the sort of goal that, you're in awe for the fact that a player like of his quality scored that. Not saying that Ronan Darcy isn't a quality player. He is. It just adds to the quality that they've got in their squad. Another goal for Stephen Duke McKenna. He started the season very well as well. That was a really nice finish for his goal. And I know you were watching the highlights before we started. It was a very good assist for that from Mikulski. But Chesterfield, they found a way corner. I think probably Harrogate will be bitterly disappointed that they've lost the game from a set piece from cracking header from Shea Dunkley, truth be told. But they'll be upset that they've lost the game from a set piece, as I've mentioned. And is that everything? I think that's all of them. Unless I don't think I've missed one, have I?
No. I think you're good. I think you got all of them.
Have you got any thoughts on those? Just overriding thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I'll say the one thing that annoyed me is the goal in the Walsall Salford game. How are you going to let a man go in that much space, that much free space on the penalty spot from a corner? That just shouldn't happen. Salford was just very, very poor in that game. Matty Young saved them quite a bit. I think he made about 5 saves in that game. Probably should have been a much bigger scoreline than it was. They were poor. Improvements needed there. I'm going to come back to the Ronan Darcy goal as well. It was just too good. I can't not mention it again. And to be honest, he did more than send them hot dogs. He sent one defender to Scandinavia and another two to the USA. It was that good. And then it's just another late winner from a corner as well. Last week it was McFadden, and this week Dunkley. But interesting that Harrogate gave him a bit of a fight, which is, I don't know. I'm not convinced. Well, not convinced isn't the right word, but Chesterfield have vulnerabilities, and then I think they've got another couple of gears yet to hit. So that there's still a chance to, have a decent game and take some points off them. I probably shouldn't say that given that we've got to play them soon, but yeah, I think the only other thing I'd mention is just coming back to the Colchester Barrow game. Will Stanway's had a great game there. I know you mentioned 6 shots on target for Colchester. Well, Stanway saved all 6. So really, really strong. Probably a typical smash and grab type. I know it's 2-0, but not just the one. But Colchester had so many chances. There was one that did annoy me a little bit when Tavide didn't square it when he just went for goal instead. But no, Barrow defensively a lot better than they have been in some of these other games. And for Colchester, just frustrating. They've not got going to the level I'd expect them to just yet. But I'll leave it there for my thoughts because I could keep going. So I'll leave it there for tonight.
Good stuff. I think the final thought, it's not even a thought. It's more of a shout-off, if anything. Sunderland fans, unreal, by the way. The fact that, look, that was at Burnley yesterday, of course, down the road from Accrington, just where we were. First of all, I've got a seat on the way home, because obviously, if you have been on that train back to Leeds from Accrington, it's just before Burnley, Manchester Road. So, honestly, Sunderland fans are dead sound, and they have been every time I've come across them. I've come across them quite a fair few times. More recently, I don't really know why I'm doing this. I'm just dragging out the pod as much as possible. But there was certainly a laugh when I was still a little bit down in the dumps, considering how not ruthless we were. The fact that we could have been top of the league yesterday, if we were just that little bit more ruthless. I've said that for the last few games. We've really got to start clicking there. And I'm still going on with our game really, but I still think this ruthlessness will come. I think we're creating chances. And loads of them. It's only a matter of time for it'll all click. As much as we saw yesterday, it's frustrating, and that's certainly the word I'd probably say, frustrating. But there's not really much more to add from that. There's a belt of a day other than that. Sunderland fans, unreal. Albeit the side that your rivals were playing black and white, and some of the chants about a team that are playing black and white. Chanting we're the famous black and white and we're dynamite. Probably not the best. Probably not the best way to go about it, considering obviously Newcastle playing black and white. I'm just going to end it there. I'm waffling. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Of course, do the usual stuff. Subscribe, like, comment, download. Of course, we'd love to get your thoughts as well. So please leave them there. And of course, as I mentioned the other day, if you do ever want to come on the pod for a preview show, send us a message. Leave it in. Probably send it on Twitter. Really, follow our account, and we'll look to do that happen. We're always interested to get your opinions on, and we're always interested to get people on. We really want to start getting more on. I know we have done a couple at the start of the season, but we really want to do more of that. Although it'll be a struggle this week, I really do Tuesday. I'm discussing this schedule. I probably really shouldn't, but of course we've got a pretty big game on Wednesday night, so the preview might be slightly earlier. It might probably be Wednesday instead of maybe Thursday you do it on. But I mean, we've got the pod on Tuesday a few times. But anyway, thank you guys for listening. As always, we really do appreciate your support. And we will see you in the next episode. Ta-ta for now.
Thanks once again to our partners for this episode, Sky Bet. Sky Bet understands the beautiful chaos of being a football fan. The highs, the lows, the heartache and the glory. It's all part of the ride, and we wouldn't trade it for anything. Not for everyone, for the fans. Sky Bet, 18+, gambleaware.org.